Welcome, everybody. Hello, I am Dr. Ted Barnett, president and founder of Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and I'm so excited that you're all here for our March Lifestyle as Medicine lecture with Dr. Melissa Sundermann, who will be speaking about optimizing brain health with lifestyle medicine. And these are other programs that we run on a regular basis. So every month we run the 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart, which is accredited by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And the Lift Project, we run that on a regular basis. And we also have regular health coaching, both in groups and for individuals. So take a look at that on our website, rochesterlifestylemedicine.org. Dr. Melissa Sundermann, otherwise known as Dr. Outdoors, is board certified in internal medicine and lifestyle medicine and has practiced for over 25 years. She has training in integrative medicine and mind-body medicine and is the founding chair of the Nature as Medicine subcommittee for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Dr. Sundermann currently specializes in lifestyle medicine with Lifespan Medicine. She previously practiced lifestyle medicine at Canyon Ranch Wellness Resort and IHA Trinity Health. In addition, she is chair of the Global Wellness Institute Lifestyle Medicine Initiative and co-founder of Revive, which is lifestyle medicine well-being coaching. She also creates educational content for several health and well-being organizations. Welcome, Dr. Sundermann. All right.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for that
Absolutely.
welcome introduction. And I'm so happy to have this opportunity to share with your guests. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Sure. I should have said
Always
as part of your, I should have said as part of your biography that you're also one of our regular panelists on our lifestyle medicine grand rounds, where you get to
I
demonstrate.
am
Yeah,
one of
you
my
demonstrate your
favorite
brilliance.
Tuesday activities every month. I look forward to that. And Ted,
Cool.
can you see my screen just to make sure that
Yep,
everything's
I,
good?
I, I can. And you remember to share your sound, right?
I did.
Perfect. Okay,
All right.
I'm gonna disappear now. It's all
Okay.
yours.
All right. Great. All right, so the title of my talk, and why you all are here tonight, is we're going to learn how to optimize your brain health with lifestyle medicine. Our objectives is that we're going to educate about the pillars of lifestyle medicine. We're going to identify relationship between dementia and lifestyle behaviors, and we're going to learn how to prevent dementia utilizing the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And I know we're probably at different audiences. Some people are very familiar with lifestyle medicine, and maybe some of the attendees, they've never even heard of lifestyle medicine. So I'm going to start from the beginning. And what is lifestyle medicine? Well, lifestyle medicine is the use of a whole food, plant forward dietary lifestyle, regular physical activity, restorative sleep, stress management, avoidance of risky substances, and positive social connection as a primary therapeutic modality for the treatment and reversal of chronic disease. Yes, actually, reversal of chronic disease. Many people think that once you have a diagnosis of something like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, that you have to have that the rest of your life. And that is not necessarily true. To look at these pillars more close, we'll break it down. Number one, in no particular order, because these are all very, very important and all play off of each other, kind of like spokes on a wheel. Number one, nutrition, food as medicine. As Hippocrates said many centuries ago, Hippocrates being the father of medicine, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And we do advocate for a plant forward dietary pattern that's fiber filled, nutrient dense, and health promoting. The second pillar, sleep. Sleep is truly our superpower. I used to think that I went through residency and worked 36-hour shifts, so I didn't need sleep. And that was far from the truth. There's so many positive attributes that we get when we have restorative sleep every night, aiming for at least 7 hours of sleep. Third pillar, exercise. I tend to use the term movement when I'm counseling my patients. I think that when we talk about exercise, some people think that means you have to go to a gym. Whereas we talk about moving our bodies, there's so many different ways we can move our bodies, and moving our bodies should be full of joy. So getting regular physical activity on a daily basis. The fourth pillar is avoidance of risky substances and risky behaviors. So tobacco use, excessive alcohol use, excessive drug use, or behaviors that don't serve us. Perhaps that's compulsive gambling, compulsive eating, even compulsive exercising, or screen time. The fifth pillar, stress management. And we all have stress in our life. There's no pill to take that stress away. But what we do have are tools that we can help manage our stress, whether that's deep breathing, journaling, meditation, yoga. And the sixth official pillar of lifestyle medicine is the role of positive social connection. We all were part of one of the largest social psychology experiments called lockdown. For about a year and a half, we were told to stay in place, don't see anyone, don't hug anyone, don't be with anyone, not in your immediate pod or family. And after that, we all felt this void. That was because we felt lonely. We were craving that social connection. And we'll dive into all these pillars as we're going through this presentation. And we also will talk about a seventh unofficial pillar. And Dr. Barnett gave a clue to that when he said that I'm Dr. Outdoors. So there is a seventh unofficial pillar that we will talk about. So these are the pillars of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So setting the stage of chronic disease here in the United States. Presently, about 6 out of 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease, have been diagnosed with a chronic disease. Chronic diseases meaning type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, coronary artery disease. And about 4 in 10 Americans have 2 or more chronic diseases. A lot of times when I have a patient who's been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they also are struggling with blood pressure and cholesterol issues. About 38% of Americans will be diagnosed with some form of cancer during their lifetime. So that's over 1 out of 3. And we now know that many cancers could be prevented or decrease the risk with healthy lifestyle behaviors. We know that tobacco can increase the risk of lung cancer. Alcohol and obesity can increase the risk of breast cancer. Processed meats can increase the risk of colorectal cancer. Half of all Americans have cardiovascular disease. 1 out of 2 people, right? And looking at diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and prediabetes, currently about 1 in 3 Americans have prediabetes. And that's a really scary statistic because a lot of times prediabetes does not have any symptoms. And so you might not know that you have prediabetes unless you go to your physician, maybe for your yearly exam, and you get some blood work done, and you have a fasting blood sugar or perhaps a hemoglobin A1C, which is a long-term 3-month sort of glimpse into your blood sugar. And your clinician may say, you know what, you're creeping up. We have to address this because if we don't address it, it could increase the risk of you having type 2 diabetes and all the complications associated with that. So chronic disease is truly an epidemic here in this country. Healthcare in the US now is costing about 4.3, that says 3.3, but now we're up to about 4.3 trillion annually. And 90% of these costs are attributed to the treatment of chronic conditions. Lifestyle medicine addresses both the root cause to improve health and reduce costs. So what do we know? Well, about 70% of deaths are due to chronic diseases of our own making. An estimated 90% of type 2 diabetes, 80 to 90% of heart disease, and 40 to 70% of cancers are considered entirely preventable. So this is actually really good news. This means that we are in control for a lot of our health. Oops. And I need to share this cartoon. This is one of my favorite cartoons, courtesy of Dr. Dean Ornish, who's one of our pioneers and luminaries in lifestyle medicine. And in this cartoon, we see that there are 2 physicians with their white coats on and their stethoscopes on, and there is flooding going on in their office. And so they both grabbed mops and they are mopping and mopping and mopping. And just as soon as they seem to get the water contained, more water comes rushing in. What they have failed to recognize is that they fixed the leaky sink, this problem would be solved. And that's what we do in lifestyle medicine. We are addressing the root cause of our chronic diseases, and that is addressing our lifestyle behaviors. So we are working way upstream. Yes, mammograms and yes, colonoscopies are very, very important, and I order those all on my patients, but those are early detection. I want to start even further upstream with true prevention. So that set the stage for chronic disease and what lifestyle medicine is grounded in. And why you've all gathered here tonight is to answer the question, can lifestyle changes help prevent cognitive decline and dementia? So this picture brings up so many emotions, right? And I've seen this way too many times in my clinic. And I can't see all of you, but I'm just going to have you raise your hand. And I'm going to imagine if you've had a loved one, family or friend, or if you're a clinician, if you've ever been with someone or treated someone who has struggled with that dementia, right? A very scary, no one wants this for themselves or for their loved ones. And this is just can be a very devastating disease. So there are many types of dementia. Different types of dementia are Alzheimer's dementia, vascular dementia, Lewy body disease, frontotemporal, or others, including Huntington's. For tonight's talk, we're going to focus on Alzheimer's dementia because that is the most common form of dementia. So when we look at the scope of the epidemic of dementia in the United States, currently about 6.5 million adults are living with dementia. About 1 in 9 adults ages 65 and above, and about 1 in 3 adults ages 85 and above. And women are at greater risk. 2/3 are women. And why is that? Well, multifactorial, likely. One, women tend to live a little bit longer. Two, when we go through menopause, there's big shifts in our estrogen, and we know that there are estrogen receptors in the brain. So with those loss of estrogen, that could be a factor. And also, there is a gene called the USP gene that's on an X chromosome that can increase the risk of dementia. And women have 2 X chromosomes, men have 1 X and 1 Y. And looking at this graph here, looking at deaths from diseases from 2000 to 2019, look at this red. That is Alzheimer's death that has increased by 145% as compared to other infectious disease and chronic diseases such as HIV, which is really plummeted, right? We've got really good medications, antiretroviral medications, prevention, education. Stroke and heart disease have also decreased deaths. Early interventions, either TPA or stents or bypass, and prevention. And then a slight increase in the risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer over these 19 years, but nothing in comparison to Alzheimer's dementia. By 2050, the number of people ages 65 and above with Alzheimer's dementia is projected to reach 13.8 million. So that's over double where we're at right now. This graph also demonstrates the trajectory of where we're heading. I absolutely love this picture here, this pictorial. This is from the Lancet journal, which is a very reputable medical journal. And what this demonstrates, it's throughout the trajectory of our life, there are behaviors that we do or don't do, that we avoid or don't avoid, that could contribute to our brain health all along our lifespan. So when I give this talk to audiences, sometimes I actually gave the same talk to the senior center in my town. And so the talk was to an older population. But sometimes I've given this talk to a younger population. And I've given it to actually my daughter and her friends. And my daughter's in her early 20s. And I said, "Are you worried about your brain health right now?" And they all looked at me like I had 3 eyes. And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you why you should be worried about your brain health right now, or maybe not worried, but addressing your brain health." So this starts even in utero. Not that we can control that, but if you are of childbearing age or you have a loved one of childbearing age, know that healthy prenatal environments are very important to that fetus. Risk factors in this young age can also be low childhood socioeconomic status, air pollution, getting into our 20s and 30s, low education, alcohol misuse, personality, and that's really a less resilient type of personality, being in a passive job where you really aren't having to use your cognitive abilities, getting into our 40s, head trauma, the concussions, smoking, unhealthy dietary patterns, obesity, getting into our 50s, hypertension, physical inactivity, sedentary behavior, job strain, type 2 diabetes, getting into our 70s, sensory deficits, in particular, hearing loss. If you have hearing loss, I highly, highly recommend that you get fitted for a hearing aid because untreated hearing loss can be a risk factor for dementia. Other risk factors are cardiovascular and cerebral vascular disorders and untreated mental health issues. And getting into our 80s, little mental stimulation and loneliness. So, a study looking at those lifestyle behaviors and how they can affect risk. This is a study that looked at 5 of those healthy lifestyle behaviors and whether their subjects followed or had those healthy lifestyle behaviors. So the 5 that they looked at for the purpose of the study were do the participants or the study enrollees follow a high quality plant predominant diet like the MIND diet? And we will talk what the MIND diet is about. Do you engage in regular physical activity? Do you engage in cognitive activity, maybe reading or writing or playing games like chess? Have you not smoked? Never or former smoker? And do you consume alcohol at a very light to moderate rate? So, what they found were compared to people who did not follow any of those healthy lifestyle behaviors, if you had 2 to 3 of those healthy lifestyle behaviors, you were at 37% lower risk of developing dementia. And if you had 4 to 5 of those healthy behaviors, you were at 60% lower risk of developing dementia. So this study suggests that those healthy lifestyle behaviors truly do have an implication in lowering our risk from dementia. So what we're going to do now is we're going to delve into each of the pillars. And I'm going to be giving you a lot of information during this talk. And what I want you to focus on and to take home is you don't have to do everything all at once. If you choose to, that's fine. But I always am counseling my patients and coaching my patients to think about 1% better. So perhaps you hear something tonight and you think, you know what? I could be 1% better in that pillar. And I'm going to try that because anything is better than nothing. And also, it's never too early or too late to start. So we'll start with nutrition. It's the standard American diet. It is of no irony that the acronym is SAD. So the average American, the bulk of their caloric intake is coming from highly processed foods and sweets and refined grains and oils. About 25% coming from meat, eggs, dairy, fish. Now, that's protein, and actually 25% of your dietary pattern in protein, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's where you're sourcing your protein. And the average American is only consuming about 10% of their diet from unrefined plant foods, such as fruits, vegetables, meat, beans, nuts, and seeds. And only a measly 2.5% is coming from whole grains. So when you look at that blue and that green, that's only amounting to 12.5%. And that's truly sad because that's the only place where you're getting fiber. And fiber is so important. Why is fiber important? Yes, it helps us have regular bowel movements, but far more important and beyond that is that the fiber is actually the prebiotic in the food to nurture our gut microbiome. Our gut microbiome is where 38 trillion organisms live, our bacteria, our viruses, and fungi. And why is this important? Well, 70% of our immune system resides in the gut microbiome. So immune system is not just fighting off infection. Immune system is also inflammation. So achy joints, insulin resistance, coronary artery disease, dementia, autoimmune disease. And actually, 90% of our serotonin, our happy hormone, is produced in the gut microbiome. And 50% of our dopamine, our pleasure hormone, is produced in the gut microbiome. So the health of the gut microbiome is very, very important. We're learning more and more about that each and every day. And fiber is key to the health of the gut microbiome. The average American is only consuming about 15 grams of fiber per day, when really optimally we need at least 35, probably greater than 40 grams of fiber per day from whole foods, not just Metamucil. So we talk about healthy brain dietary patterns versus not so healthy brain dietary patterns. On the left, dietary patterns are going to be healthy for your brain, or be dietary patterns in polyunsaturated fatty acids, monounsaturated fatty acids, dietary patterns rich in omega-3s and omega-6. Now, we are plant forward in lifestyle medicine. So some people are plant exclusive. And so fish, yes, fish is a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. However, if you are plant exclusive. You don't have to consume fish for a healthy brain. And also brain with health and wine. We used to think resveratrol comes from wine and maybe you should drink a glass of wine for your brain health. And now we say, no, 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 no. We don't need to drink wine for brain health. So I'm going to put an X there. It's not that you can't have wine. You just don't need to have wine for good brain health. And down below, we have all of these colorful fruits and vegetables. And as Dr. Will Bolsiewicz, our favorite gastroenterologist, says, eat the rainbow. And I am not talking about M&Ms and Skittles. I am talking about fruits and vegetables rich in polyphenols, antioxidants. We'll talk about what the MIND diet and DASH diet are. And then on the right side, dietary patterns that are not going to be as healthy for your brain. So these could be saturated fats, and particularly saturated fats come in highly processed meats. And when we look at the World Health Organization and we look at carcinogens, meaning things that cause cancer, we look at class 1 carcinogens, things that are proven to cause cancer, things like tobacco, things like plutonium, things like highly processed meats. Yes, highly processed meats are categorized as a class 1 carcinogen. So not only bad for our brains, but also increase the risk of cancers. So highly processed meats would be our sausages, our bratwurst, our hot dogs. So trying to avoid those and also trying to avoid simple carbohydrates. And trying to avoid our westernized diet, fast foods, greasy foods, highly processed foods, sugary substances. So where can we find these omega-3 rich foods? Well, we can find them in soybeans. We can find them in canola oil. However, if people are using oils to cook with, I would recommend cold pressed extra virgin oil as my top choice, even though canola oil is a good source of omega-3. Also, fish do have omega-3. Our nuts and our seeds are dark leafy greens, and seeds like flaxseed, which is just wonderful. Make sure if you are getting flaxseed that it is ground, and you want to store that in your refrigerator. And that's flaxseed you can add to your smoothies. You can put it on top of your oatmeal. You can put it on top of your salads, just anything. And I always like to address soy because I think there's a lot of myths that go along with soy. I know I believed them for the early part of my career until I actually read the evidence. Soy contains phytoestrogens. Phyto means plant, and estrogen, the hormone. That is where the myth begins. People think or may think that if they've had a hormonal related cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, that they need to avoid soy because it contains estrogen. Now, this is where the myth comes in. Endogenous estrogen is estrogen produced by our own bodies. Phytoestrogen come from a plant. Phytoestrogens bind to a different receptor in our body. They actually bind to a beta receptor. And when you consume soy in the form of organic tofu, tempeh, edamame, and it binds to that receptor, regular consumption of soy in females can reduce the risk of breast cancer by up to 30%. And if you've had breast cancer, regular consumption of soy in these organic forms can reduce the risk of recurrence by up to 30%. And in men, no, no, no. You're not going to get man boobs from having soy and phytoestrogen. Regular consumption of soy in males could potentially reduce the risk of prostate cancer by up to 30%. If you are plant-based, you can get plenty of omega-3s through plant foods. So our berries, our nuts and our seeds, our dark leafy greens, our squash, again, our flaxseed. And if you want to take a supplement, yes, there's fish oil supplement, or you could go straight to the source, which is an algae-based omega-3. The fish eat the algae, and that's where they get the omega-3. So if you want to take a supplementation, if you have a concern you're not getting enough of your food, I'd encourage you to get an algae-based omega-3. So let's come to that MIND diet. What does MIND diet stand for? Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. That is a word salad, no pun intended. So the MIND diet was developed by Dr. Martha Claire Morris from Rush University, and it's a hybrid of the Mediterranean and DASH diets. Most people have heard of the Mediterranean, maybe not familiar with the DASH diet. But the DASH diet was a plant-forward dietary pattern looking to alleviate high blood pressure. And basically, Martha Claire Morris categorized food into 10 brain healthy food groups and 5 brain unhealthy food groups. And so this is a really good chart that looks at the Mediterranean, the DASH, and the MIND diet. And these are all healthful dietary patterns. And they're all very plant forward, which is wonderful in the eyes of a lifestyle medicine clinician. And it includes, beans and berries. Now you'll see that the MIND diet does list it and does and can include fish and poultry, but you don't have to have that. And again, I'm going to question, we don't have to include wine to that. So the MIND diet, what we do recommend excluding in the MIND diet is butter and stick margarine, cheese, and people love cheese, and that sometimes is a very hard thing to reduce or to cut back on. And it is one of the highest sources of saturated fat and sodium in the standard American diet. And avoiding fried or fast foods, avoiding red meats, and avoiding sweets. So the bottom 5 are going to be the 5 brain unhealthy food groups that Dr. Martha Claire Morris identified with the MIND diet. So let's look at a study looking at this MIND diet. And this was the Rush University Memory and Aging Project. And it involved about 1,000 patients, and they were ages 58 to 98. They were recruited from 40 different residential communities, and none of the individuals during the study period had any evidence of cognitive decline. And they followed them for 7 years. And what they found was strict adherence to the MIND diet, which again is a plant-forward dietary pattern limiting meat and dairy, resulted in a 53% reduction in risk for Alzheimer's dementia. That's huge. What about if you just kind of did it? Well, even moderate adherence to the dietary pattern was associated with a 35% decrease in risk reduction for Alzheimer's dementia. And participants who showed high adherence to this dietary pattern had cognitive functioning equivalent to a person who was 7.5 years younger. That means you could be turning 80 chronologically, but your brain is only 72.5. So again, anything is better than nothing. This is a study that came out in 2024 with Dr. Dean Ornish, who I talked about as one of our luminaries. And this is a very exciting study, a small study, but this gives us hope that there's going to be larger studies going on. So 51 subjects who had mild MCI, so mild cognitive impairment or early stage dementia. And they split them in half. 26 subjects were assigned to an intervention group for 20 weeks, and the other 25 subjects were assigned to do whatever you've been doing. Don't change a thing. The people in the intervention group followed a whole food, plant-based dietary pattern. They did moderate aerobic exercise and strength training for at least 30 minutes per day. They did stress management practice for about 1 hour per day, whether that's journaling, yoga, meditation, and they participated in an online support group for participants and their partners for 1 hour sessions 3 times per week. The results were really very encouraging. They saw a significant improvement in 3 cognition test assessments, the CGIC, the CDR-SB, and the CDR Global. Borderline significant improvement in the ADAS cognition test. They also saw improvement in the gut microbiome. And remember, the gut microbiome is so important. Our immune system, our serotonin, our dopamine. And they saw an increase in the amyloid beta 42/40 ratio. This is a blood test. And the higher the ratio this is, the lower the risk of dementia is. So this is very encouraging that lifestyle interventions, yes, can help improve our brain health. Moving on to pillar number 2, exercise, or as I'll refer to as movement. Modern technology, modern conveniences. Oh, what a wonderful thing. Look at me. I'm giving you a webinar to people from all over the place. When you're in the chat, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's actually someone from my town in Pinckney. So hi, Pinckney. I'm outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, but we're gathered here tonight because of technology. However, technology and modern conveniences have made us less active and more sedentary. Before we had cars, we had to walk places. We had to ride bikes places. We had maybe jump on a horse. Now I could literally call an Uber to take me across the street. Before we had washing machines, we'd have to wring out our clothes. We'd have to go outside and hang them to dry. Now we throw everything in a box and press a button. Before we had refrigerators, we'd have to go down to the corner market, maybe once a day, maybe a couple times a week. Now I could order Uber Eats and actually have it get it delivered to me while I'm giving this presentation. And then we got TVs and we got Netflix and we got binge watching. And then we got computers and we got Zoom and we got work from home and we've got video games. All of these things are making us more sedentary. The American College of Sports Medicine, the CDC, and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine are all aligned in our recommendations for physical activity. We recommend getting at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity. So that breaks down to about 25 to 30 minutes per day. And if you don't have 30 minutes, at a time, you can break that into bite size. You could do 10 minutes in the morning, maybe 10 minutes on lunch, and 10 minutes in the evening. What about modern intensity? Do you have to have a smartwatch? You have to have a heart rate monitor? No, you don't. You can do something called the clock sing test. What is that? Well, let's imagine that you are out tomorrow morning taking a brisk walk with one of your friends. If you are at that modern intensity, you and your friend could carry on a light conversation. But if you tried to sing a song to your friend, you would get out of breath. So able to carry on a light conversation, but you get out of breath singing a song, that would be modern intensity. If you get out of breath trying to carry on a conversation and singing a song, that would be vigorous activity. So that's just a really practical way. We also recommend getting at least 2 times per week of muscle strengthening activity, strength training, resistance training. This is very important. As we get older, we lose muscle. It's called sarcopenia. Particularly women, when we go through menopause and we lose that estrogen, we are at risk of losing our muscle mass. And having lean muscle mass is very, very important. It's very important for our brain health. It's also good for preventing falls and for our bone health. The role of exercise. So exercise helps to improve our mood. It helps to increase our confidence. We'll talk about how it can reduce our risk of dementia. It also increases connection between nerves. And importantly, every time you move your body, you are increasing the level of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. Think of BDNF as being miracle grow for your brain. You know that blue powder that you maybe sprinkle on your plants? You sprinkle it on your plants so that your plants will grow and sprout and flourish. That's what BDNF does for your brain every time you move your body. It helps to increase synapse connections, helps neuroplasticity. So think of that the next time you are moving your body, all that BDNF and miracle grow that's going on in your brain. So this is a collection of studies that looked at exercise in relationship to Alzheimer's disease. And what they found was getting exercise about 30 minutes per day, at least 5 days per week, at that modern intensity could potentially reduce your risk of dementia by up to 40%. Another study, a very large study, looking at close to 80,000 participants in the UK Biobank study, these participants wore accelerometers, which are fancy pedometers. So track their steps and also their cadence. Their cadence meaning how fast they walk. And what they found were participants who got at least 3,800 steps per day or close to 4,000 steps per day could reduce the risk of dementia by up to 25%. If you upped that to close to 10,000 steps per day, you could potentially decrease your risk of dementia by up to 50%. This is way better than any pill that I can offer my patients, right? Just by moving your body and eating healthy. And resistance training. Yes, that is me. That is me in the gym because I am saying this out loud because it's something that I have made a priority to myself now that I'm in my mid 50s is to get this resistance training. So this is a study that looked at participants who already had mild cognitive impairment, and they did resistance training 2 to 3 times per week for 6 months. They found at the end of this intervention is that nearly 47 participants achieved normal cognitive scores after the intervention. So take home point, optimizing leg strength is effective at improving cognitive performance. Moving on to pillar number 3, sleep. So why do we sleep? Is it just so we can put our legs up, get a rest, have some crazy dreams? Well, a little bit of the physiology about sleep. When we sleep, we are restoring our ATP. ATP is our energy molecule. During the day, we burn up ATP. As we are burning up that ATP is converted into adenosine. And adenosine is our sleep driver. So as we move our body during the day, the more that we move our body during the day, we build up more adenosine and allows us to feel tired and fall asleep and stay asleep. That's why if you have caffeine later in the day, caffeine binds to the same receptor as adenosine, and that's why you don't feel as tired. That's why if you've built up all this adenosine and then you take a 3-hour nap at like 3 in the afternoon, you don't feel tired anymore at night because you basically burned off the pressure cooker. So as we move our body during the day, and the more that we do, we build up this adenosine and we feel tired at night. When we sleep, we also have a very active brain that's consolidating memories, it's gaining insight, it is creative, and it is solving problems. Maybe you've heard the term, I'm going to sleep on it. And that is true. I know that sometimes I'll have something going on at work or maybe something going on at home, and I just am in a situation I don't know what to do about it. So I say, I'm just going to sleep on it. And then when I wake up in the morning, I have clarity. I think, oh my gosh, this just came to me. Well, actually, it just didn't come to me. My brain was processing that all night long. And then something that's really cool in the brain that happens at night is we actually have a waste clearance system. We have something called the glymphatic system. Many of us have heard of the lymphatic system, and in your neck, sometimes when you get sick, you might feel your lymph nodes get swollen, and that's your lymphatic system to clean out that sickness from your body. Well, in your brain, we have the glymphatic system. During the course of the day, our brain accumulates tangled proteins and toxins that can be detrimental to our brain health. So the glymphatic system is like a series of dump trucks. And during the day, when we're awake, those dump trucks and those dump truck drivers are out there talking, reading the newspaper, just hanging out. But when we go to sleep, in particular, get enough sleep, try to get at least 7 hours of sleep so that we're able to cycle through our light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep, that glymphatic system and those dump trucks go to work and they carry out all those tangled proteins out of the body into the CSF. And this is super exciting because these are the very first images of the human glymphatic system. So the left image, and Dr. Barnett's a radiologist. He probably would be able to read this more than I can as an internist, but this is the first time that we can actually see this lymphatic system in working progress. So let's look at a study about sleep during middle and more mature age. I don't like old age, more mature age, and incidence of dementia. And this study that I'm highlighting is the Whitehall 2 study, which was about 8,000 participants and looked at positive association between sleep duration and incidence of dementia using a 25-year follow-up. What they found was reported higher dementia risk associated with sleep duration of 6 hours or less at age 50 and 60 compared to a normal 7-hour sleep duration. And also persistent short sleep duration at ages 50, 60, and 70 compared to persistent normal sleep duration was also associated with 30% increased dementia risk, independent of sociodemographic, behavioral, cardiometabolic, and mental health factors. So take home point here is if you can aim to make sleep a priority. And if you can aim to get at least 7 hours of sleep. What works for me, and I'm not saying this works for everyone, but works best for me is when I figure out what time I have to get up tomorrow morning, and it might be a work day, it might be a day that I don't have to work, I work backwards. So let's say tomorrow I have to get up at 5 in the morning because I have to get to my clinic. I'm going to work backwards and say by 10 o'clock, I need to be in bed. That means maybe climbing into bed at 9:30 so I can settle down, maybe read a book, being intentional about this because so often maybe we start working on a work project, we get sucked into a really good book, we get sucked into a Netflix, and we don't make sleep a priority. So your brain health depends and is attached to our sleep habits. So really trying to emphasize this. Also, obstructive sleep apnea if you are at risk of sleep apnea. And how would you know that? Well, maybe someone who shares a bed with you or a room with you or a hotel room with you says, my goodness, you snore a lot. Or my goodness, like you're gasping at night. That could be signs of sleep apnea. Signs could mean that even though you were sleeping for 8 hours, you wake up every morning feeling tired or you're falling asleep during the day. Those could be signs that you have sleep apnea. If you do have signs or symptoms of sleep apnea, I urge you to get a sleep study to make sure that you don't have sleep apnea. If you do have sleep apnea, I urge you to get treatment because what we find is late midlife severe sleep apnea untreated is associated with more than double the risk of all-cause dementia and a 66% increase in the risk of Alzheimer's dementia. So very important to treat Alzheimer's or to treat obstructive sleep apnea if you do have it. Moving on to risky substances, and we're really just going to focus on alcohol for this. Currently in the US, the guidelines for alcohol are 1 drink or less a day for women, 2 drinks or less in a day for men, or non-drinking, obviously. So that's 7 drinks in a week for women and 14 drinks in a week for men, which sounds like a lot. In Canada, they recently changed these recommendations and said, I don't care if you're a male or female, really, no more than 2 a week or abstinence. So really, I feel that hopefully the US is going to do what Canada did and reform these recommendations and these guidelines. As we're talking about the original with those resveratrol and brain health and red wine, how it back in the day we thought, well, maybe a glass of wine is good for your brain. What we're finding is that for brain health and for any health benefits, alcohol is not of benefit, right? It's not that you can't have any, but there's just no health benefits to it. And there's recent studies that came out that there is no level of alcohol consumption that does not increase the risk of dementia. So for all practical purposes, I would say to be very mindful about your alcohol consumption. If alcohol is not a big deal for you, cut it out, and if it is something that you enjoy, just trying to be mindful about your alcohol consumption. Next pillar, stress management. And we all have stress in our life. No pill to take that away. And what can we do about that? So this was a study looking at midlife psychological stress and the risk of dementia. And when we are looking at this study in midlife stress, there's stressful things that happen. Perhaps you're running late for work, you're wearing a white blouse or shirt and you spill coffee on it, and then you have to change your shirt, and then there's a train that's in the way and now you're late for work. That's a stressful day. When we're looking at this study in midlife stress, we're talking about those deep stressors that last for weeks, perhaps months, perhaps years. Maybe caring for an aging parent. Maybe it's being worried about a child who's struggling with mental health. Meaning maybe it's being in a job you despise, but you need the paycheck, or being in a marriage that you're unhappy, but you need to stay in it. Those are the kind of stressors that we're talking about. And does that affect brain health? And it can. That's what this study is showing, is that compared to no stress, which I haven't met that person yet, perhaps the Dalai Lama would be the no stress. But as we have more periods of stress in our life, that could potentially increase our risk of dementia. So what do we do about that? Well, we're not going to walk away, and we can't walk away from these stressful situations when we are in it, right? We're not going to tell our aging parent we can't help take care of them because it's all about our brain health, right? What can we do to manage our stress? And that's where tools come into play. One of the best tools for managing stress is practicing mindfulness. This doesn't mean you have to sit like a pretzel on the ground and chanting Om. This means practicing mindfulness and paying attention on purpose in the present moment. And some ways that you can learn about how to practice this is a colleague of mine and Dr. Barnett's from Lifestyle Medicine, who recently came out with a book of Feeling Stress is Optional. And she has lots of tools and QR codes to do experiential practices with her, Dr. Robin Tiger. And then one of my favorite authors to learn about mindfulness and practical ways to practice mindfulness is John Kabat-Zinn. So if you're wanting to learn more about mindfulness and how to incorporate that into your everyday life, I'd urge you to check out both of those authors. Pillar number 6, social connection. And again, Vivek, I didn't mention Vivek Murthy before, but Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is our outgoing Surgeon General of the United States, came out with his Surgeon General's advisory in May of, I believe, 2023 about the health risks of social isolation and loneliness. And what they found was being lonely or socially isolated could increase the risk of all-cause mortality and dementia. In fact, they said that being lonely, being socially isolated, could be the equivalent health risk of smoking 15 cigarettes per day. So it's very important that we connect socially, positive social connection. This is a study looking at that, looking at does greater social engagement actually have an impact on brain health and brain matter? And what they found were older adults who remained more socially engaged showed more robust gray matter in areas related to dementia. So this doesn't mean you can't have alone time. I love alone time. My husband's actually out of town tonight. So after this, I'm just going to be with my doggies and be alone, but I'm not lonely. So finding ways to connect, whether that's in a book club or going bird watching or going to your gym or going to a senior center or going to a place of worship, having a tribe. A tribe could be one person. A tribe could be several people, staying socially connected. And another study that links loneliness and dementia risk. This study found that loneliness is associated with a 26% increased risk of developing dementia. So find your tribe. Pillar number 7. This is what I talked about, the unofficial pillar of lifestyle medicine, and that is daily connection to nature and fresh air. Hippocrates was also a doctor outdoors, and one of his quotes says, "The physician treats, but nature heals." And as Dr. Outdoors, I really am pushing hard for the 7th pillar. When we look at nature connection related to brain health, this is a study that came out looking at hospitalization rates related to neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And what they found were exposures to green and blue spaces had a protective effect or decreased the risk of hospitalizations for Alzheimer's and dementia. So when we talk about green spaces, that's forests and trees and shrubs and plants. Blue spaces, meaning oceans, lakes, rivers, streams. So connecting with nature can be good for your brain health in terms of neurodegenerative diseases. And another study looking at a different part of our brain, the amygdala. The amygdala is what is our fight or flight. When we have a risk or perceived risk or threat, our amygdala fires up, puts us into that sympathetic fight or flight. Now, the thing is, sometimes we need to relax. We want to relax. We want to get into that parasympathetic. So this study looked at taking a 1-hour walk in nature versus a 1-hour walk in an urban environment, a city environment. And what it found was getting into nature actually deactivated that amygdala, allowed us to get into that parasympathetic, that relaxation state. So that includes the formal part of my discussion, and I'm going to end with a very short but impactful video. And when we talk about extending our lifespan, we talk about, oh my gosh, I hope I live a long life. Absolutely. But as a lifestyle medicine physician and as a human, I not only want to live a long life, I want to live a long, healthful life. So we want our health span and well span to match our lifespan. And this is going to be a video. It's a split screen. It's the same actor. On one side, you will see the gentleman living a very healthful lifespan. And on the other side, a not so healthful lifespan. And after you've heard what I've talked about today, I want you to watch this video and decide what side of the video you want to be on. And knowing that you do have the tools and powers to optimize your health and well-being. So hopefully this is going to play.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
It's very, very powerful. I've seen that video probably 1,000 times because I show it to my patients in my office, and I still get teary-eyed when I watch it. So that's what it's about, right? And as a lifestyle medicine physician, that's what I want for all of you. I want that for myself. I want it for all my family and friends and all of my patients and all humans. And that's what Dr. Barnett and Dr. Graff, who is also here tonight, and lifestyle medicine, all of our colleagues in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, that's what we are really wanting to give to all of you and educate and empower and walk this healthy road with you to live a life of vitality and to have big dreams and big goals and to not let health stand in your way. So I am honored that I was able to share this presentation with you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sundermann. That was wonderful. And as you mentioned, Dr. Graff is here with us. Dr. Graff is the medical director for Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. And I'm going to just share my screen really quickly because I have a couple of things I want to show before we get to the Q&A. And here we go. So I just want to tell you a little bit about more about the programs that Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute runs. We have our 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. We have the LIFT project, we have health coaching, and quite a few other programs, including lifestyle medicine grand rounds. So just take a look at rochesterlifestylemedicine.org. Also, we are a nonprofit, and so we'd love it if you could consider making a donation tonight or anytime to our organization. The programs that we run do not, although we charge for some of them, it does not cover our operating costs. So we have some very generous donors who make it possible for us to reach a wide audience. We've reached, with our Jumpstart alone, we've reached over 2,600 people in 44 states and 9 countries. We've had almost 400 physicians around the country refer at least one patient. And our lifestyle medicine grand rounds has reached about 1,000 physicians. And if you figure that every physician has about 1,000, actually probably 2,000 patients, but we'll say 1,000, we'll round it down. If we reach 1,000 physicians and they each have 1,000 patients, then we've reached over 1 million patients with our programs. So now I am going to stop sharing, and Dr. Graff is going to help us with the Q&A. So take it away.
Oh, wonderful talk, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to just start off because there were lots of questions in the chat. We have about 15, so we're obviously not going to get to all of them.
Yeah.
But the first one was really, it was just asking about RLMI and whether we still advocate for a completely whole food plant-based diet. And I do want to reassure everybody who's on here that we do. That said, we meet people where they are. So we want people to eat as whole food plant-based as they possibly can. But whatever people are willing to kind of move towards that is a bonus. So there's a little bit of a question about why you included fish as part of this. And could you speak to that?
Yeah, so I give this presentation to a variety of different audiences. And just like Dr. Graff was saying, is that as a lifestyle medicine physician, I advocate for whole food plant-based dietary patterns. When we're looking at brain health, and my favorite neurologist, Dr. Dean and Aisha Sherzai, will say, fish is actually probably okay for your brain health, but we choose to not consume fish. And with lifestyle medicine, that's our optimal goal, is to be completely whole food plant-based. However, when I am counseling patients, I'm looking to shift to healthful dietary patterns. And some people just, that's not where they want to go. And I think what Dr. Graff said is meeting individuals where they're at and going with that. And when you saw that pie graph of the standard American diet, we have a long way to go. So absolutely you do not need fish. And that's why I shared the omega-3 of the plant-based sources, that you don't need fish in order to be healthy.
And obviously the same goes for oil, right? So
absolutely
your oil choices if you're going to use oil, but the optimal would be to not use oils at all, correct?
Yes, yes. So we know that we can saute with low sodium vegetable broth or even water. So there's lots of alternatives to if you're making a stir fry or sauteing that you don't need oil.
There was a question that came up before you talked about alcohol on the talk, asking about how alcohol impacts brain health, but it was also asking about marijuana. Do you have
Yeah.
specific information about
Oh,
marijuana?
I am not an expert in this. So I am going to say I'm not going to comment on that. I know that in developing brains, in teenagers and young youth, that can really impact their, because you don't have a fully formed brain until you're 25. So there have been some studies linking use of marijuana in the developing brain as being detrimental. But in terms of in adults, I'm going to defer from that because I don't know that research.
Sure. I'll comment on that a little bit, actually. So not that I was ever much of a user. In fact, back in because I grew up in the 60s, right? So it would be impossible for me, but I did smoke 1.5 times back in the, okay. So what they
But
say now, the current
you
marijuana, what's that?
you didn't inhale, so
That's
you're
right. No, I never exhaled, but that's a different story. No, the new marijuana is not the same as the marijuana that people were
No.
exposed to back when it sort of became this fad. And so now we have these dispensaries all over the country, and people are finding it leads to psychosis. That leads to dependency. It is not a safe drug anymore. So not that it ever really was safe, but people are going around telling people how safe it is, and it's available like in gummies and all these other things. People should be really cautious, and they should actually read. There's quite a bit of stuff now in the popular literature, and I'm not so sure about the scientific literature as much, but if you look in the popular literature, just in various newspapers and things, there's just so many anecdotes now about how dangerous it's become. So I just want to throw that
Yeah.
out there.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for that input.
sure.
There's a question about whether the increase in Alzheimer prevalence might be due to increasing in diagnoses or whether it's due to higher life expectancies. And could you make a comment about that?
I think it's multifactorial. I think, yes, we are living longer. Yes, maybe we are giving a diagnosis more. But I think the thing that, we're seeing is look at the rise in chronic diseases across the
Mhm.
board, right? And they actually refer to Alzheimer's as being type 3 diabetes because we talk about inflammaging is inflammation in the body, and the state of chronic diseases of increase in type 2 diabetes, increase in high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all of these chronic diseases are on the rise. And because Alzheimer's disease is an inflammatory disease, it's also going to follow in that. And then you also have what we call the exposome. So our environmental toxins that are out there. So we're just learning more and more about that. Air pollution can be a risk factor, microplastics. I think we're just starting to learn more about that. But I would put Alzheimer's dementia in the category of we're seeing an increased rise in chronic diseases.
There's a question about untreated hearing loss. Is it a risk factor for Alzheimer's because people disengage from real life? And then there was a subsequent question asking about whether uncorrected visual impairment has similar impacts on Alzheimer's.
Yeah, the research that I've seen it's any kind of sensory, probably because of that loneliness and not getting that input. The one that they do seem to highlight the most is hearing. And if you think about it, for sensory deficits, that is one that is the most easily correctable too, right? If you have vision impairment other than getting glasses, if you're blind, there's not much we can do, at least right now with technology. But with hearing loss, getting a hearing aid, being able to get that input, being able to socially connect, is much more treatable.
Thank you. There was a question about if soy milk was as helpful as edamame, tofu, and tempeh. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think if you can get the whole foods, it's going to be more important. In terms of if you are wanting to do a non-dairy milk, I think that soy is an excellent choice and you're going to get those phytoestrogens. But in terms of your source, if you want to incorporate soy into your diet, I would recommend getting it from tofu, tempeh, edamame as your first choice.
And there's a question about what are the major muscle groups that should be strengthened? So you talked about all the major muscle groups.
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah. So all of them. When Dr. Dean and Aisha shares, I actually presented at our ACLM annual conference, and they really emphasized lower leg strength. So as being really, if you're looking at what are you going to optimize, or you have time to go to the gym to work on a major muscle group, it's going to be the lower body. So those quads, doing some squats and things like that seem to be what they felt was the most important muscle strengthening group.
Yeah. And if you think about it long term, if if something happens to you, like what do you need to be able to do as you get older? You need to be able to get yourself on and off the toilet. You need to
Yeah,
get yourself in and out
right.
of. How do you stay independent? You may not
Yeah,
have upper body strength, but you can get
yeah,
by in life without so much there. But you've got to be able to do those critical activities to be able to be
yeah.
independent. Having had a mom
Yeah,
with
you know what, Carrie, I see something in the chat that I can actually, Carol says, what are your thoughts about early testing, i.e. the Gallery blood test and clearly AI for heart disease? So these are interesting tests, Carol. The group that I'm in right now is a concierge group, and um, these are expensive tests and may or may not be covered by insurance or certain insurances. So for people in the audience, the Gallery test is actually a blood test that can look for early detection of cancer. And so we offer this to our patients, and there's certain cancers that don't manifest with symptoms until late stage. Examples would be maybe pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer. By the time they cause symptoms, it could be stage 3 or stage 4, and it's already spread. So the Gallery can be really good for peace of mind, because when I order it, I said, oh, your Gallery test says, did not detect any cancer signal. Versus, oh, it looks like we got a cancer signal that could be related to ovarian or pancreatic, then we can go in and dig deeper. So I think that it's an option. You just have to be aware that it's not 100% accurate and that it could be costly. And then as far as the Clearly, when we talk about risk stratification in early detection of heart disease, obviously we can do blood tests looking at lipid proteins or lipid panels. We can look at lipoprotein little a. We can look at lipoprotein B. These things can look at our risk. And then you can do something called a coronary calcium score, which is only about $100 if it's not covered by insurance. So relatively inexpensive when you look at all testing, and that can give you a calcium score, can also give you a risk factor of your heart disease. And then you could do something called a Clearly, which is uses AI, artificial intelligence, to look at plaques. Now, when we do the coronary calcium, that's looking at hard plaques, calcified plaques. We can't tell if these plaques are going to like flick off and cause a heart attack, where the Clearly can actually look at, are these soft plaques or these hard plaques, meaning stable or unstable. So they're really interesting. I do run them on my patients. They can be expensive. We're talking like over $1,000 for the test if it's not covered by insurance, but they do provide really useful and accurate information. So if you are at high risk and you really want kind of a gold standard of what is offered right now beyond like getting a heart catheterization, the Clearly is a good option.
Okay.
Actually,
Um,
I'm gonna interrupt for 1 second because we've actually run out of time, but if Dr. Sundermann will be willing to stick around for a few more minutes, is that okay?
Stick around for a few more minutes. Sure.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna officially adjourn because we're gonna pretend that we're actually punctual people, even though it's now 8:36. So we're gonna officially adjourn and let people go, but if you want to stick around, we will be answering questions for a few more minutes. So thank you all for coming. Dr. Sundermann, thank you for your wonderful presentation. Dr. Graff,
Absolutely.
it was brilliant. Dr. Graff, thank you so much for helping us with the questions, and in the background, thank you to Kim Taylor and Serena Farb who engineered tonight, and anybody else on our team. So we're officially moving into the lobby now. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay, now we're back.
Oh, wow. Ted, you look the same. You haven't changed a bit.
Well, neither of you. We look fabulous.
Oh
Right?
gosh, thanks.
So we're getting some thank yous in the
most of the questions
Yeah.
are a
Yeah.
lot of, but one of them was about specific supplements for brain health. What specific supplements do you recommend?
Whole food, plant-based. I mean, my biggest supplements are going to be all the pillars that we talked about. Now, in terms of what supplements do I take that can optimize my brain health? I actually do take an omega-3 algae-based supplement. I remember talking, I think it was oh, was it Essie? It was someone who was like, you can get everything through your food. And then he actually had his blood test and he was like, oh, I need a supplement. So I do supplement with an algae-based omega-3 just to make sure that I'm getting enough. I take vitamin D because I live in Michigan. I take a vitamin B12 with to make sure that I'm getting adequate B12 because that comes from not the meat itself, but from the microbes in the soil that the animals eat. So those are the main ones that I do take. I think that, some people consume some mushrooms that I think is okay if you want to do lion's mane or cordyceps. I think that those can have some nootropic. But in terms of supplementation, I think the best thing you can do is really optimizing your lifestyle behaviors and perhaps taking algae-based omega-3.
Okay.
And
second that.
Dr. Sunil Kumar, I see in the chat. Sunil is from the UK, so gratitude to Sunil for logging on very late in the UK. So I take at least 1,000 milligrams a gram of omega daily.
And of DHA, EPA, or one or the other, or
Yeah.
which one?
Yeah, DHA, EPA.
So slash, okay.
Mhm.
And you said
Yeah.
that's basically 3 capsules then, because most of them are around 300.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And you spread that
Mhm.
out during the day, or do you take them all at once?
No, I just take
Pop
all
them.
at once because I'll forget, right? Compliance, right? I just,
Right. Sure.
yeah, I'm better if
Okay.
I just do it at one time.
Okay.
There's another question in the Q&A
Yeah,
about
let's go with the Q&A. That's because we ask people to put questions in the Q&A, so we're gonna have to reward them for doing that.
right if we can about
Right.
what food supplements or other strategies would be most supportive after a traumatic brain injury with or without concussion. This person had heard that keto diet is where they should go. Is plant-based keto the answer? Other ways or other specifics?
So, there have been some studies of a more keto-based diet with seizures, particularly childhood seizures. I don't know of research, and again, I'm not a neurologist. I'm an internist who has a passion for brain health. I don't know of literature of ketogenic diets for dementia. Now, if you were going to do a ketogenic diet and wanted to try that, I would recommend doing a plant-based, plant-forward ketogenic diet. So, doing healthy fats, avocados, nuts, and seeds as your healthy fat source rather than butters and animal products. So I have not seen the evidence for ketogenic dietary patterns, even plant-based ketogenic for in terms of brain health, concussion, and brain injury with dementia. The only thing I've seen the literature is for the early childhood seizures. I don't know if Dr. Graff or Dr. Barnett, you have anything further about that.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
like you had, which is I don't know
Yeah.
about the data for traumatic brain injury with or without
Yeah.
concussion. The ketogenic diets can be useful for suppressing seizure disorders in kids that have failed on medications, but then they have all the other bad outcomes that happen from a ketogenic diet later on. So
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword. But if you've got a kid who's got uncontrolled seizures,
Right.
failing medication, and you can control this with the ketogenic diet, the long-term implications are less important than the short-term gains and these critically ill children. So
Yeah.
there were questions that was asking about if there's anything in particular you would advise with various cancers of the brain. Is there anything different you would advocate in terms of brain cancers?
Yeah, that's not my specialty, but when we're looking at optimizing our immune system so that you can be as healthy as you can and decreasing inflammation in your body, we know that the gut microbiome is optimized through fiber intake, prebiotics. So the more fiber from your whole foods is going to help lower the inflammation in your body and optimize your brain health. Now, I will say, as Dr. Outdoors, that's a whole nother presentation about nature, and their early studies looking at Shinrin-yoku forest bathing showed that spending time out in nature at least 20 minutes per week around green spaces, so trees, actually increases your natural killer cell activity. Natural killer cell activity is involved in our immune system. So I would say to this individual that consuming a whole food dietary pattern, all the pillars, moving your body, getting enough sleep, socially connected, and getting outdoors, particularly around green spaces, could optimize your immune system.
It sounds amazing. I spent
Mm.
one afternoon doing forest bathing meditation. It was a series of meditation exercises that were guided, that were done in the forest, and it was amazing. I've never felt so relaxed in my life. I
Yeah.
don't, it was amazing. Question in the Q&A about what brand of of algae-based omega-3 supplements.
So I mean, I like Nordic Naturals. I'm not sure if they make an algae based. I can't even remember what brand I get. I just go to my it's basically like a local type of Whole Foods and get it from there. I'm sorry, I don't have a brand. Do you guys have a brand, Dr. Graff or Dr. Barnett?
I don't take an omega-3 supplement,
Okay.
so no, I
Okay.
tend to use Solgar for other things because they're US based and they list all of their testing online. So you really know it's legitimate. You're getting what they say that you're getting.
Yeah.
And it's available easily and is kept in brown bottles. So you're not worrying about light exposure or degrading the
And
product.
what brand was that?
I like Solgar, but I don't know whether they
Okay.
make an algae-based omega-3 because I don't take one, but probably I should.
Yeah.
Seven.
So that I like, so Melody, Consumer Lab, thank you for bringing that up. I love Consumer Lab. That's where you can go to that website and really vet supplements and really get the research for which ones, because there's so many supplements companies out there and you don't even know what you think you're buying. It even contains that. So Consumer Lab is really good. And also looks like Complement. Ellen is talking about Complement. So thank you. Oh, and so Nordic does have a plant-based. Yeah. So I love Nordic Naturals. I think that's a really reputable brand.
Okay. Question in the chat about napping in the afternoon. Is that
Mhm.
bad for overnight sleep?
Well, really, so Matthew Walker is one of my favorite sleep researchers, and he wrote the book Why We Sleep, and he has a wonderful podcast called Matt Walker Podcast. I talked about that physiology with adenosine being our sleep driver, and if you take too long of a nap or too late, that adenosine plummets. I guess the question is, are you still able to sleep at night? If you're still able to get 7 hours of restful, restorative sleep, even though you're napping and it's not causing any problems, then I think that's okay. So I think this is very individualized. I know myself, if I take a late afternoon nap, like I'm just not going to be ready for bed by 9:30 or 10, and then that's going to carry into the next day. So I think it's very personalized and individualized, that one size does not fit all.
Love that answer. I'm one of those
Mhm.
folks that if I nap at all, I feel like dog meat. Other people, they wake up feeling completely refreshed with a little,
Yeah.
Mhm.
like Dr.
Well,
Barnett. So,
yeah, I'm a professional. I am a professional napper. I nap every day. Usually,
now
but
never.
anyway, but usually around noon. But anyway, it's 8:45. Dr. Sunderman, thank you so much. Dr. Graff, thank you so much. Everybody in the audience, we still have 85 people here. We broke 120 at one point. So I'm so grateful for Dr. Sunderman again and all of our staff. So tune in next, check our website and tune in for our next program. Good night,
And
everybody.
come to Grand Rounds if you're a
Yeah.
healthcare professional next Tuesday.
Yeah, next Tuesday, you get a free CME. And
Yes.
even if you're not a healthcare professional, you can come. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Engineers. Yep. Shut it off, Serena or Kim. We're done. Good night.
Good night.